Welcome back to a brand new episode of Private Parts with me, Liv Bentley. This is the podcast where nothing is off limits. And this week we have the one and only, my glorious mother, Katie Bentley, back on the sofas. Oh, Mama, she's back again.
Thank you for having me.
Without your other half. I was about to say without your other half, and that's the worst expression.
No, I think you've now got the yang. You've had the yin. So
Now the yang.
You've now got the yang.
But your clip about talking about wanking went quite wild. People enjoyed that.
That was probably a little bit out there, was it? Not sure.
No, I don't think it was too out there. People like it.
It was a true story. So in life, I have to stick to the truth as much as you can.
That's true, unless you're my father who likes to elaborate on the truth. Like if you ask him to recall a story, it definitely never happened.
No, his motto is, why ruin a good story with the truth?
That is...
Whereas I sort of tend to stick to the truth because I haven't got enough imagination to make it up.
See, whereas I should lie about my stories because they probably are slightly more savoury. Joking, obviously not. Anyway, now this is just about you and me, Mama Bear. I would love to ask your opinion on being a mother and being a mother to 5 children, and what you think if you were to do it all again now, the impact things like social media would have on you as being a parent.
Okay, so do we break that down?
We'll break it down from the beginning.
Yeah.
So 5 kids. Did you always want to pop all 5 of us out? How did that even happen? I mean, I know perfectly well how it happened.
No, certainly I think you need to have more than one child if you can. And I fully appreciate there are people who probably have quite enough with one. People often ask me, so if I go right back to the basics, people say, oh, what was the hardest going from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5? In all honesty, it was going from none to one. And I think I was the youngest in my own family. So, and I wasn't, I really envy kids these days who get to be the sort of neighborhood babysitter or have lots of hands-on practice with other people's babies. I was not like that at all. For no particular reason, I suppose, but nobody asked me to be their babysitter. But I had no prior experience at all. My sister, who had children, was in Australia, so she wasn't nearby. I didn't sort of hang out with her babies. And so that the adjustment from nothing to one was enormous. And I think, one has so many sort of preconceptions of how lovely it's going to be, and you see all those lovely sort of cards of mother and baby and the Madonna and child and all that. Isn't it all wonderful? Fucking nightmare. I think nobody tells you about sleep deprivation, and there you are, these two being, forget the baby, but your partner could be male, female, could be anything, and you struggling to survive on minimal sleep, not having a clue what you're doing. I mean, really, but not having a clue. You've got this thing, and I have to say, I can rabbit on for hours about it because I keep myself awake at night wondering where I went wrong.
What do you mean?
No. But genuinely, I did the diligent thing. I went to antenatal classes. Fabulous. Spend 10 weeks, 2 hours every Monday, discovering how best to push this person into the new world. Screw it. You've got to do whatever the doctor says when the time comes. If you've practiced having a water birth and they say, sorry, folks, that's not going to happen, you're screwed if all you know is how to have it in a bath. And what I wanted to know, which I didn't know, and nobody taught me, or certainly not in the antenatal class, your eldest sister, firstborn, had colic. I didn't know what colic was. I had a pony who died of colic when he was about 13 years old, but I mean, I didn't know what it was in a baby.
Child.
And basically, in my experience, it was a baby who cried 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the first 6 weeks of her life.
It's just not for me.
And you don't know, there's no rule, but you don't know what, and when you're a new mother, it's too hot, too cold. And of course, my mother was not there. We were living somewhere else. My mother-in-law, dear thing, kept saying, oh, she's too hot. And then she had her old biddy friend who'd come with her. This is for Christmas, actually, when the eldest was literally 2 or 3 weeks old. And, oh, no, she's too hot, she's too cold, she's this, is she wet, is she dry, is she hungry, is she, and you just don't know. And I was very ignorant about the whole process. And again, ladies listening, I automatically assumed you have boobs on your body, they are going to produce milk when the time is right. Bollocks to that one. I couldn't feed to save my life. I had no clue what I was doing. And when I did do this antenatal class, they said, oh, put all your books away. Don't clutter your mind up with all these books.
Yeah.
So I did. And actually, I'm not very good at researching stuff anyway. So, and we didn't have Google. And so I didn't, I just assumed you'd lop it out and shove it in and the baby would quite happily have
Like what
breakfast.
Kev did to create the
Yeah,
baby.
well, no, yeah, let's not go down
Absolutely
there.
revolting.
Anyway, it did not happen, and I struggled trying to feed. And so this was a rather silly anecdote, but there's something called the NCT, which I think is the National Childbirth Trust. Anyway, they rented basically a milking machine. So it was none of these very delicate hand pumps that you could attach and do very discreetly. Kevin went to London to pick it up. And it was so heavy, he left it in the car for the first 2 days.
Wait, sorry, like a machine that milks
it was probably to stimulate or whatever. And by the time he got it out of the car, he couldn't remember what tube was meant to go where or what. And it looked like a miniaturized thing that you'd give to a cow.
Get on all fours and get the pail out.
I mean, it was just shocking, and it didn't work. Or at least he didn't know how to make it function. And I didn't know what the hell I was looking at, and it didn't come with an instruction manual. Meanwhile, this baby's screaming in the background because you don't know what's going on. Anyway, Dad was very adept. He went into the village and came back with formula and bottles. So, and whenever I read articles and it says, breast is best. Yeah, it's best, but don't give people who can't do it a hard time.
Yeah.
And I had failed to appreciate that actually, in order to produce liquid, you have to be drinking an awful lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not very good. I'm rubbish at drinking water.
If you
That's
had
purely
Instagram,
for show, I want you to know.
if you had
I don't
Instagram
drink.
now, the breastfeeding thing is a super, not controversial, but it's like one of the most spoken about things about whether women can breastfeed in public, whether they should, whether they shouldn't, how long you should do it for, saving the milk, pumping it like that. It's quite a lot.
I mean, and the goodness, that if you're not doing all of that for your child, you are depriving it of all the nutrients that it's meant to have, and it's
Do you believe that? In your case, do you think out of all 5 kids, did anyone you breastfed the longest to have like a stronger immune system?
Actually, that's a very good question. Your middle sister or middle child, I didn't. I struggled with the eldest. Struggled with you. Was told I was starving you, I think. So I thought, sod this. And then when the third child came along, quite quickly after you, I remember diligently lopping the boob out and thinking, "Oh, this is going to work." Really sort of probably being overly anxious and making everything dry up. And anyway, I fed her, and we had somebody who came to help because I had 3 under 3. So we had this sort of quasi-maternity nurse. And this woman sort of came back into the room having fed her, or the child, and took the baby away to burp it. That's something they don't tell you. Burping. You sit there for hours smacking this thing on the back, waiting for some fart or belch to come out. I mean, that was a new experience. Anyway, she reappeared after about 10 minutes, and rather gleefully, this woman said, she's just projectile vomited everything across the room. And I thought, you know what, Sunshine, I'm not going to bother anymore. I've tried my best. And I think it suited her purpose that she could get the baby into a routine. Everybody's fanatical about a routine, which does make life a lot easier.
Yeah, but okay, so on to all the routine stuff. What about the sleep thing? Like, did you, because, I mean, obviously I wouldn't remember, but did you, with all of us...
Whose sleep, the baby's or mine?
Yeah, I don't know, well, mainly ours. But no, when you let the child sleep and scream, and what's it all called?
Oh,
self-soothing.
Self-soothing.
No, because this, honestly, on Instagram, and I look at, there's a influencer called Megan McKenna, and she was talking about her sort of routine, whatever, and people have trolled her for the way that she's doing it. But this is why, actually.
And does she let the baby cry?
Yeah.
Well, there's all that stuff in Meet the Fockers, isn't it? When Robert De Niro's trying to sort of let the baby self.
When he's wearing a rubber boob. Can you imagine Kev coming in with a tit on? Actually,
well, no,
I could. That's the worst part.
God almighty, his would have been bigger than mine. But no, so yes, the 15-minute rule. And I have to say, I remember fighting with my father over it, and he said, "Oh, for God's sake, let the child cry or whatever." And again, you didn't have all the sort of whistles and dancing video screens that you can see now when you've got a baby monitor. And I used to just watch this red light go up and down as she was screaming her little lungs out. And I would say, no, I've got to go and pick her up and cuddle her and. And he said, but don't let her cry. And I was like, no, because if she then cries to such a point that she's then almost dehydrated. You then got to soothe her with a bottle. So that she then has the bottle, and then hey ho, let's just change her nappy. So so it was much easier just to pick her up and cuddle her, and then try putting her down. I do think the 15-minute rule is valid.
Yeah.
I had a dreadful story. Oh, this is awful. We were flying to Australia to see my sister, and we stopped halfway in Bangkok. And for various reasons, they'd screwed up the booking and one thing and another, and we were given a junior suite, traveling with the eldest, who's literally had just learned to walk. She was 13 months old. And we were put into this junior suite, and the baby's room was the other side of the suite from where Kevin and I were. So we went to sleep, and that was fine. And then after about 5 or 10 minutes, and the baby was jet lagged and wanted to be up and about, and it was all a bit sort of difficult. Anyway, thought, no, 15-minute rule, put her down. We couldn't hear her from our room. And anyway, suddenly there was a knocking at the door, and they said, is your baby all right? And I said, yeah, she's absolutely fine. I went and had a look, and, she was still sort of, trying to settle herself down. We gave her a cuddle and put her back down. I said, no, she's fine. And we went back to bed again. And again, not that it's to be understood that I wasn't listening out for her, but we couldn't actually physically hear her in the room, but I knew she was safe.
Yeah.
Anyway, another 5 minutes passed, and the door goes again. Is your baby really all right? Yes, she's really all right, but she's obviously, was a bit fractious. But my 15 minutes, I kept resetting the 15-minute clock. Anyway, then the phone rings, and they says, do you want us to get the doctor for your baby? Which, please understand, she was not screaming hysterically, she was crying. What we had failed to realize is we were in a very nice junior suite. Some poor sod was the other side of the wall from her cot. So he was getting, a sleepless night thanks to this baby. So then they then knocked on the door and said, we are moving you. So my husband, myself, and the baby were shoveled down the room, leaving bye-bye at junior suite, and we shoved into a broom cupboard where nobody could hear us. And then my lovely husband, your delightful father, suddenly sort of says, oh, hold on a second. What am I doing in here? We've got a whole empty junior suite over there. I'm going to go and sleep in that instead. So I was left with this baby, and it was one of those things that I'd long gone are the days where I watched the sunrise. But I did. I watched the sunrise with that child, and we just sort of walked around endlessly as she was, trying to get accustomed to everything. But, Kev enjoyed the junior suite.
Obviously.
And that poor man got some sleep in the room next door. So all ended well.
What was Kev actually like when we were younger? When we were babies.
Baby babies. Oh, you must. I mean, I've got various photographs, again, thanks to the life of bottle feeding, of Kev lying. Sort of, you start off with the baby with the bottle, and then sort of you could see that they both just ended up sound asleep. And I've got a photograph, certainly of your brother, definitely of your eldest sister, and so his interaction was not good. But I also was the era where I didn't have a job, so my role was
but that is a job. But you had
to do the night feeds, and I mean, I've listened to other friends of mine, and she said, "Oh no, he can get up and do it in the middle of the night." I've done, and I thought, God, if I'd said that to Kev, that would have been an interesting one. But no, I never did. He was very good at all sorts of things. And actually, he had probably sort of a male brain about sort of, I mean, it's like when he went to the chemist and he came back with formula, I thought, God, how did he know what he was doing, And so he was quite good at taking control. I think when you were not so much babies, I think he would be embellishing the story to say that he changed 5 nappies over 5 children. I don't think that was his, and God help you if it was a mucky one, because that was not his scene. Clearing up puke, no. Did he go round with a muslin on his shoulder covered in baby up? No, no. So, but he came into his own when you were all that little bit older, and you had monkey bikes and mini mokes and all the boys' toys. So he was fantastic with all of that, and coaxing you down, from trees and where I'd be in a frenzied heap.
When he shoved me on the back of the motorbike when I was like 7.
Oh dear God! And I'd be in the background saying, "Where's
running
the
around with her
helmet?"
apron on, screaming because Kev had shoved me on something.
Oh, and not to have a let's bash Kev time, but I remember we went skiing, and we had 4 children, which ergo means you've got 4 sets of skis and 4 sets of poles, but I don't think Eddie wasn't born, but the youngest one I don't think skied in the afternoon, so I think I had her with me. And I said to Kev, could you please go and collect them all from ski school?
I remember this.
So he reappears an hour later. 2 children, no skis. I said, well, that's great. What have you done with the rest of them?
And the child.
Well, that's it. They're not purely the skis. I was more
I
worried
actually
about
fully
the
remember
child.
that because we were going to run away. That's one of my earliest memories was that ski holiday.
And that was the precursor to Eddie, I think. Was it that one?
Yeah.
Anyway, he's great at all sorts of things, but leaving children behind is possibly. But I'm also guilty of having left one behind once.
Ibiza, Kivara.
Yes.
Oh no, that's quite.
That was awful.
We all went on a family holiday, and
girls only
in Mallorca, and we were sitting at the table, and I think we were doing like a final dinner. It was us and another family of 5 girls and the mothers, and
there was 12 children, girls, and 3 mothers.
Yeah. Anyway, it was the final supper. I must have been about 12. Anyway, my mum stood up to give a little speech saying, "Thank you so much" or something. To all my wonderful daughters, are they all here?
No, yes, on behalf of my family and I, it was indelibly printed in my mind. I was very, very pompous. It's sort of taking a leaf out of my father's book. I said, on behalf of my family and I'd like to say thank you very much. And I said, on the assumption they're all here, which is a stupid line. I mean, who says that? Anyway, suddenly did a head count. We were 1 short. And we had all been, this was in Ibiza. Oh, no, it was in Mallorca. And we'd been at the local hotel, very chic hotel.
But you get to on a boat.
And we went to by boat. And then I had been helping one of the other mothers do something with the bill or whatever it was. And the original mother, our host, was loading all these kids onto the motorbike. And then us two, what did I say?
The boat, not the motorbike.
Oh, the motorboat, sorry, or the boat. And thank you. Anyway, this other mother and I then arrived quickly to get on board because we were late. And off we went. And then we got back to the house and we all laughed about the gecko in the loo and we did this and that and the other and eventually sat down and realized that my beloved eldest child was not there. And of course, by that time, it was too late. No, I will go to hell for this. It was too late to take the boat back. So we had to go by car, which was even longer. You know, going across the bay by boat was speedy, but it was too dark. No, anyway, end of the story is she's probably never forgiven me, but we did find her and it was, and she was 10 and that I will go, would you, God, no, you were a scallywag. No, this is a different story.
Oh, in the Oracle?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I'll explain this one. No, we were shopping in the Oracle shopping centre in Reading, and my mum says to me, this is why I walk really fast. You said, you're looking in the windows and we're to look at you. So we weren't window shopping, you were. So we all stood there. Anyway, eventually I obviously got caught looking at something, realised I was lost, so cried. And then a sweet woman came over, got me, and then took me to like the information desk. And they did the announcement saying, has anyone lost a child? Please come to this bit. And I think by that point, then I was rather upset. So my mum appears and they said, is this her? And I said, no, it's not.
Oh, God, yes.
No.
All good fun.
But we're all still here now. No, because...
you can tell that none of them will trust me with their grandchildren. That's all my grandchildren.
Oh, I fully would. I definitely would. I have this bizarre thing that people keep asking me to be the godmother and happy to trust me with their children, which I think is truly shocking.
And you're very good with them.
I weirdly am quite good with kids. Although I'm certainly not ready for my own yet. But do you look back and think, is there anything you would have done differently?
Oh God, a million things.
Really?
Yeah, no, a million things. And I envy, I think I was so uptight. And I think if I'm probably honest, and there's somebody can correct me or agree with me, whatever, that I think my anxiety was probably what caused the colic. Because I think
really?
I think I was so, you're fumbling around not having a clue what's, and I think that stress probably did stress the baby or whatever. I remember when your friend Binky came down, it was the first person of your generation who appeared with a baby. Oh, I was so jealous. She was cool as a cucumber, absolutely, letting it all go, just in such a different headspace. Whereas I think, I came from a very uptight background. I wanted to do the right thing and do the right thing by the baby.
But were you nervous through the pregnancy? Were you stressed? Like, were you... Because this is...
I loved being pregnant.
Did
and
you?
I was spoiled rotten. I never... You know what? I hope my 4 girls have my thing in life because I never had morning sickness. God help me, I never even had the menopause, but it happened. It's been and gone. You know, I was very, very lucky, and I hope for you.
Yeah.
I don't know why it would be genetically.
No, but because were you quite strict? Because this is another thing as well that I worry for younger, like my lot who are having kids, because of there being so much out there, mainly on social media, but things like not eating certain things, or you, when you're pregnant, being very strict on what you're having. Were you religious in that when you were pregnant with us? Or was it like, oh, I'd have the odd drink? Hang on, didn't you take up smoking when you were pregnant with me?
No comment. No.
Maybe that's where I get it from.
I didn't smoke for the beginning of the pregnancy. I can't.
think,
No,
Mum,
I gave up. No.
But you are aware you're meant to stop at the beginning. You don't take it
Yeah,
out
but the trouble
halfway
is, how
through.
many people actually know from day one? So you're invariably going to find out towards the end of your first 3 months,
Yeah.
which is where I don't know at what point any damage gets done. Yes, I did smoke, Libby, but then
I don't mind.
your father, who you know is now in his 60s, has led a pretty healthy life, and his mother literally would have him on one boob, fag in the other. I mean, that was what was going on in the 50s. So and it didn't.
I rate that, if I'm honest. I think it's quite jokes.
I know, every cigarette packet will show you pictures of deformed babies and everything. I don't think you're deformed. I think you're perfectly beautiful, even if I did smoke the odd cigarette.
No, because I
would probably want to say don't bother. But,
smoking.
Yeah.
Don't. No, but it's more like the eating of certain things.
Well, again, I remember being pregnant with your sister and saying to my gynecologist, I said, and expecting a whole list of things, your do's and don'ts. And the receptionist looked at me and I said, he hasn't given me a list of what I should do. And she said, what list? I said, well, aren't I meant to not eat certain things? She said, whatever you want, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then one thing that was big is that you weren't to eat any soft cheese. So I don't know if that's still a thing.
I think it is.
The trouble with fashion and trend, not clothing fashion, but trends of feeding or whatever, there's a new thing every day. I mean, if you're reading the Daily Mail 1 minute, and this is nothing to do with babies, you're meant to drink red wine, it's good for you, then you're not meant to, and if you actually went through everything, you're probably not even meant to drink water because it's got too much shit in it. So, I think you have to be sensible and pick and choose. And I remember going on holiday with my sister from Australia who was pregnant. And she was we were in France, it was a family holiday, and she was tucking into the cheese board, because of course in France, why not? And I was like, you can't eat that.
Brie.
What are you doing? And she looked at me as if I was weird. And in Australia, they didn't have any issue. And whether that's because French cheeses were not pasteurized, I don't know. I never really scrutinized it. But and sadly, I'd love to say I had a craving for all sorts of interesting things, or wanted ice cream in the middle of the night.
Didn't you like the smell of petrol with that?
No, that did make me throw up. I'd have to say.
I thought you enjoyed it.
No, not at all. No, I remember absolutely gagging on that. But no, I didn't have a craving for anything. I didn't. No, very boring. Very boring.
Yeah, because I was trying to think. I only remember my only memory of you ever being pregnant. Obviously, it didn't. Athena, not really being pregnant. I remember her as a baby, but I remember with Eddie, obviously you being pregnant. Because we were all
that was
slightly
wonderful.
shocked that they were starving sex. I didn't think it was a thing.
No,
they did.
that horrified.
We were all horrified. But I remember, because I found your funny. I was sleeping in your room one night and you said, I'm just taking vitamins. And I was 10 at the time, so I don't know why I was so fucking nosy, cheeky bitch. Went to go have a look at them and obviously couldn't even read the word prenatal or whatever it was.
Folic something.
Something ridiculous.
No, I remember that was a bit of a surprise. So I had 4 beautiful daughters, and
within 6 years of each other.
Yes, 5 and a bit, I guess.
That is nuts.
And so I was 30.
You've got to be joking. Kev's ringing me. He knows I do that every time I get him on.
What?
Kev?
Hello, darling.
I'm just on the podcast.
Oh, no, I'll let you go. Where's your mother? Have you seen her?
No, I haven't.
Later.
Yeah, just text her. All right, love.
Everything all right?
Yeah, no, everything's all good. All good. Love you.
Bye.
Bye. We haven't told him that she's doing it.
No, I haven't. I haven't told him where I was.
He never rings me ever. In the last 3 days, he's called me every 5 minutes. It's because when he can't get hold of you, for some reason, I'm the backup. I don't know why.
And I'd have to say, I'm not Mother of the Year. I did not do it single-handedly. We did have lovely different New Zealand girls who were traveling and come for 6 months. Because I was I wasn't working and I was at home. Although nowadays that has to be redefined.
But you don't need to keep justifying that you were
No.
working.
No. But
That you weren't working, sorry, because I don't
well,
know.
no, it is work. But I mean, the point being that I was. You don't forget, we're talking about an era where working from home didn't exist. So
No,
it
I know,
wasn't
but
like
also
I was in an office.
having babies is like.
Well, no, and that's why I was trying to qualify it. But I was physically in the house, so therefore, it was great having the extra pair of hands, and I think it gave me liberty to be able to go to the supermarket without trailing 4 kids around with you. You know, and you see it, and my heart breaks on these poor women, snotty-nosed kids, one in the thing, one sitting in the trolley, one sort of screaming and walking around with a packet of crisps, you know, to try and, all of that sort of, maybe you don't see that scene anymore. I used to. And so that, it gave me the freedom to do that. And also being a bit of a corporate wife for your father at that time. So we did have somebody in the house with all of you. And God, I remember 2 stupid things. One, having to go to London for a dinner and all togged up, high heels, dressed to the nines, and driving down the drive and seeing all the ponies in the field with no blankets on. And I thought, oh God, and you'd all be in bed. So I had to climb over the gate and run into this field, all sort of togged up, and sort of dragging the blankets over these ponies to put them to bed and all of that. And then there was another wonderful time we were going, it was actually white tie, it wasn't even black tie. And I thought, I'm going to be really organized, put everything on, got the right stockings and knickers, the whatever, had all the underclothing, put on something on top, and got to London. I even had my jewelry on. Got to London, I'd left the dress behind. So that was, luckily, there was a dress shop that we used to go to a bit that was still open, and they lent me something for the night.
But I mean, I don't know how you would have put up with all of that stuff. Like, I think about it now. I talk about it with actually a lot of my friends who've got one child. We always talk about how amazing I think you are.
Well, you're very kind. But then you see, and this comes back to the working side. I remember doing the school run with all of you, and that was. It was about a half-hour journey, but I loved it. I'd find myself driving home listening to the wheels on the bus, which was great. But I would get you all to school, and then one of your dear sisters said to me one day, "Mum, could you please take me to school in something that matches?" And I looked down, and this is pre the legging era, pre the tracksuit era, pre any of that. And I looked down, I thought, well, I'm pretty presentable. I'm not in my pajamas. What should I be wearing? And she said, oh, just something, like a jacket and trousers that match, or a jacket and suit that matches. And I sort of said, oh, okay, what sort of why? And she said, well, at least that way it looks like you go to work.
That is fucking rude. That wasn't me, was it?
No, it wasn't. But I thought, poor child, she's obviously embarrassed that her mother doesn't have a job.
But Mum,
or we were at a school where
But they probably all had one child and probably had full-time help. I think having 4 kids and 1 nanny actually probably still isn't enough. It's enough a mother and a nanny and 1 child. I don't think you give yourself enough credit, if I'm totally honest.
No, but you're sweet. But I just remember thinking, oh dear, But my initial reaction was, what am I wearing that was so shocking? But anyway, that it didn't match. Because I thought I'd sort of vaguely put myself together most mornings, or try to.
Don't be so ridiculous.
Anyway, going back to yes, next question.
No, I was just going to say, you guys did have all 4 to keep going to have a boy, right?
No.
What is the actual story?
I was the one. I was a complete shit to my own mother, if you want to know the honest truth. So I wouldn't say I was a complete shit, but anyway, I didn't have the greatest relationship with her. And Kevin was phenomenal with his mother. Absolutely. And I thought, my God, I want a little boy who's going to look after me.
What, with the 4 evil older stepsisters?
Well, you never know. But I
bitches.
wanted a little boy who'd look after me. And so I was 36 and I'd had my 4th daughter and was at an event. And this girl who I knew came up to me and she said, she'd just had her last attempt at IVF and it hadn't worked. So that was it for her. She wasn't going to try anymore, which was very sad. And I said, I've just had my 4th daughter, so that's it for me too. Not that blah-de-da had finished on babies. And she said, no, not at all. She said, I've read your palm and you're having a little boy when you're 42, 43. And that was 6 years hence. And I was like, no, I don't, And so if I was wanted to be so dramatic about it, I think the seed was sown that night. because it was always playing around the back of, you know, and I
you
told
then
Kev the story, and you know, we ummed and ahed, did we want a little boy, did we not want, you know, or did we want another baby, whatever. And of course, school fees and all the pressures of whatever, life. And anyway, then the time ticked by, and not because I suddenly turned 42, we thought about it more, but it was sort of, we endlessly revisited the question. And I remember buying the ovulator kit, and I said to Kev, I said, well, you know,
Well, yeah, because you all told us it was that time when we were skiing.
Well, no,
and I walked in, and you were both
the-
in your underwear.
Dad-
and
Dad-
honestly, age 10, Kev goes, I've just given her one.
Dad, no,
Daddy?
Dad is going to find a ski instructor who looks like Eddie and sue him probably. But no, anyway, and I said to him, I said, you know, if we want to do it or whatever, and he said, you know what?
No.
He said, and we'd just come back from said skiing trip, and he said they all were able to carry their own skis. That was the most important thing for him, was that they were self-sufficient. And he said, you know, let's not. And about the following day, I discovered it was actually too late, that there was a master, Edward Bentley, was already en route. So there we go. So in answer to your question, you know, did I plan 5? I don't know. 5 planned me.
I mean, because I grew up because I'm 30. I want 5 kids, I think, but then it's so fucking expensive. There's no way. But I think it's obviously it's different. I don't know because I would love to recreate what you created for us. Just the relationship really between all of us. Like I think we're so lucky and fortunate. But what was the difference in being pregnant when you were 32 to when you were 43? Because now I've got obviously friends my age having babies, but then I've also got other friends who are in their 40s having their first child. And I'm not that I'm in a rush to, I mean, I'm fucking single, so unless I go to sperm bank, which I'm not going to, I have no intention really of having any child anytime soon. But I don't know.
Which is fine. I mean, I remember ringing the same aforementioned antenatal clinic and booking myself in or antenatal classes rather than clinic, and saying, oh God, am I going to be the oldest person? Because I was 30 having my first child. And the woman sort of laughed at me and said, no, you know, because I was thinking everybody in their 20s was sort of, you know, having them all. And my own mother, I mean, she had her first baby at just before she turned 21, I think.
I mean, that is nuts. Can you imagine me with a 10-year-old? It'd be smoking at this point, wouldn't it, really?
I know there's, what did I feel about it? I think the pregnancies, I mean, the old body sort of, I suppose, was giving out a bit. But I think what I would say, in contrast to either side of the 5 of you, is when you guys were all babies and I was younger, I had the energy but not the patience. I think I was very short-tempered with 4 of you if I wanted to beat myself up about that. And so by the time Eddie came along, I had the patience but no energy. So I had the energy with you guys. I mean, you know, and actually, in all honesty, it doesn't matter what age I was never going to be kicking a football around. You know, I'd leave that to your father.
Well, he's not even doing that either.
No, he's not. So yes, I had better patience. And I'm very, you know, I really do hold on to the fact I was terribly spoiled, because I really got the best of all worlds, and maybe you kids suffered, but having the 4 of you was a wonderful, crazy time, but I didn't necessarily have the amount of time for each of you individually.
But you can have that now with us, which
I welcome. But by then having Eddie that bit later, I had the joy of having an only child in the set, and you know, he'd probably hold his hand up to say, you know, yes, he's the prince, and he's spoiled.
He is golden boy in everyone's eyes, honestly.
But
Let me tell you.
He can walk it, you know, if you go into a shop with one child and one little voice says, Mommy, can I have yours? Yes, darling, of course you can. You go into a shop with 4 little people, I want a chocolate bar, I want a crisp figure. No. You know, so that's sort of the difference.
While we're on that note, because we actually did you a few favours, didn't we, to save any parking tickets? And there's a letter that you framed that's in that was in the downstairs loo.
That's doing me a favour? No.
We helped. No, as in, from a child's perspective, we did help you out by sitting in that car. My sweet mother got a letter from the police.
Never challenge a traffic warden. We all want to, but you mustn't. So there I was with the repetitively...
While we're on this quickly, may I just say, this is where time management, I think, has really fucked us, I think. Because some people's version, my mother used to say, I'll be back in 2 ticks. Yeah. That is honestly between 2 minutes and an hour and a half. We don't know which one it is.
And you know what, my darling? You will say exactly the same to somebody. This one, I messaged her the other day. She said, Mum, just in the bar. Call you later. Or call you afterwards. Well, that was the longest bath I've ever known because it took 3 days. By the time she rang back, I said, "Has your skin all crinkled off and fallen?" You know, that awful thing. So don't don't say you learnt it from me, because I'm learning it from you. That's something I would like to say to people out there. And somebody said it to me who is a mate of my mother's. Do not be arrogant about not listening to your children, and be open-minded to learn from them.
Yeah.
And I think that is so fundamental to your relationships, and keep it. I think the generation gap's always going to happen, however much you want to fight it. But I think I learn from you guys collectively every day. And it's not just about, the joy of having girls and you say, what mascara or what's, this, that, and the other, but learning your experiences, educating me on all sorts of things. And I don't ever be stuck up. I remember my father used to refer to your father as that young whippersnapper, and all that sort of stuff. No, you all have a voice. Yeah. And I think that's again, something I'd really like to emphasize is, hear your children. Don't ever be dismissive of what they say. Yeah. You must, and as you can tell, I don't really need the microphone because I shout loudly. I was the youngest of 3 girls, and there were times when there were 4 boys in the house as well, so tentatively the youngest of 7. And I deliberately cultivated a loud voice in order to be heard, because you just didn't get, as like today, I'm not letting you speak, darling.
Mum, I honestly like it. You're doing better than I am. We'll make it a regular. Is there anything that you probably deliberately didn't do or did do that your parents did for you when you... What was your childhood actually like, though? Because, I mean, I know we talk about it, but was it... it was very different, because my grandmother, your mother, was very... I mean, she was... I hate the expression prim and proper, but she was very... From even when I remember her.
She was a corporate wife, without a shadow of a doubt. And we were... I'm not going to say we were brought up by staff. I mean, my nanny, who I adored then, kept me going, and I'm still in touch with. And actually, I was messaging her this week. She lives in the Isle of Man. And I get emotional, actually, about her, because she was really, really important to me.
Yeah.
Really important, actually. And I remember... No, I won't go there. Anyway,
No, Mum, don't get upset.
No, so that she was pivotal in my life. My own mother tried her best, but she was a corporate wife, and my father was terribly demanding.
Yeah.
So she was at his beck and call, and they were a complete unit, which is wonderful in a marriage. I'm not knocking that.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to be on the periphery of that. And my sisters and I were all on the periphery of that relationship. And they traveled in the days when corporate wives, they'd go to Australia for 4 weeks. They'd go, and I remember them not being there. That's what I remember about them. I think my mother did give me some odd pearls of wisdom, which again, I'm more than happy to share, which are decisions invariably make themselves, which you've heard me say many times. And I think that's so true. You lie awake at night, think, oh God, should I take that job? Should I take the other job? I quite like that job. And something will happen. You put it, and I'm not going spiritual or anything like that, but, something will fall into place that actually it's not even a decision that's made. It just sort of falls into place. So and patience. What are her other lovely things? Don't give it all away at a glance.
How dare you?
And that's what she learned
These are
from
my
her
longer
mother.
shorts.
That's what she learned away from her mother. Sadly, I don't think she had the opportunity to be the mum that she wanted to be. And so I tried to be the mum to you guys that she wasn't to me. You all make up for what you don't get. And I think in everybody's opinion of my offspring, they've probably been shortchanged in all sorts of ways.
I don't
that you think, and you'll do stuff with your kids. You think, well, my mother did that, so I'm going to make sure I do that with you. And you still fuck up on something. We're all fallible. There isn't a rule book, and everybody's got different personalities.
But that's the other thing that I always find so interesting, because we talk about this as a family a lot, how all 5 kids were essentially raised the same. I mean, we were by the same parents, but how we're all so different. But do you think that's a whole, what is it, not nurture over nature, but is it just, do you think people are born a certain way, or does that make sense? You know what I'm trying to say?
No, one would like, I think the pecking order of a family is always going to take its toll, you know. I think the eldest does have a hard path to you know, she's forging away, he or she is forging away. And I don't think that's easy. I don't think it's easy for the parents because they're learning, and I don't think it's so easy for the
What are
child.
you most scared of when you had when you had Kinvara?
What the fuck to do with it? I mean, you know, you come home from, I remember this
See, I'll be
tiny,
honest, it gives me nightmares. Like, I don't know what I would do. Because I didn't even know the babies couldn't have water. I mean, yeah.
I think, oh God, it's going back a few years. I remember coming home from the hospital and we did have a maternity nurse lined up to help with her. And she wasn't available, you know, that's the crazy thing. And actually, bizarrely, my eldest child, did arrive on the day she was meant to arrive. So that's fairly unheard of. 2 myths out there. One is babies coming on their due date, very rare. 2, forgive me, water's breaking. Your father used to endlessly say, go round with a jar of pickles, so that when your waters break in the supermarket, as they're inevitably going to do, have the jar of pickles to spill on the floor.
You are
know.
joking. He
And
did not. Actually, I'd like you to recall the other story of before you've been popping us out, because I mean, the way Kev does recall it, but it's shocking. His bedside manner, I suppose, when...
What bedside?
And that's what I mean. Can you say the bath story?
Okay, so 4th child, dark and stormy night in March, 27 years ago. And I had been in the kitchen, sort of bizarrely doing admin. I'm the admin person in the household. And so I was paying bills, I remember, sort of sitting there writing checks, another old-fashioned thing, and timing my contractions. And then eventually I thought, actually, you know, I think I'll go and let him know now. So I went upstairs. It was probably about 5 a.m. And I sort of went to Kevin and said, darling, I think we ought to sort of go to the hospital. And he said, you know what he said? I think I'll just have a bath first. So I thought, okay, fine. I said, okay.
But honestly, tell him to go fuck himself.
So I get facetious if people are like that. And we have this family motto, I think we touched on it before, of saying, yes, dear.
Yeah.
So I said, yes, dear. Let me run it for you, dear. So I went to the bathroom, started running the bath, called the people who sort of were vaguely on standby to come and look after you 3 girls while we were going to go off halfway through the night. And I was running, and so he was then in the bath, and I said, sweetheart, can I get you a cup of coffee? That would be nice. Cup of coffee, please. So I give him the coffee in the bath, still timing my contractions. And then he might never speak to me again. Anyway, then he got out of the bath, and he said, oh, I could let you. He said, do you want to have a bath before we go? And I suddenly thought, well, actually, maybe he's not so stupid. Maybe I probably should hop in. No, but, you know, we grew up in an era of save water bath with a friend or a husband. Anyway, so I hopped in the bath and got myself dressed and then was coming downstairs. And he said, where's your suitcase? Do you want me to put that in the car? I said, oh, no, don't worry, darling. I've done that. You know, so basically all you now need to do is to drive me to the hospital. So that's my story.
Because the water's breaking and that kind of thing, like... But didn't mine broke? Yours broke with me. Weren't you in the kitchen?
Yes. No, yours did break. And Kev was on a business trip somewhere, and your lovely, divine godmother was staying, sort of vaguely be there for me. You were a little bit early. And I remember coming down into the kitchen and said, not quite sure about this. I think my waters are broken, or otherwise I've just become sort of vaguely incontinent. And I said, what actually happens when your waters break? And she had 3 daughters. And she said, you know something? And she was married to a doctor. She said, you know something? I don't actually know. My waters never broke. So I'm like, okay, so I'm now sitting here on some rolled up kitchen paper wondering, you know, whether this is something sort of old age hitting me hard and fast, or whether in fact my waters are just gently breaking. You know, sorry about the graphicness of this. Anyway, I rang the doctor and he said, listen, come on down to the hospital. Olivia's timing has always been immaculate. It was the Friday of August bank holiday weekend. So basically nobody wanted to be hanging around waiting for this baby. So I got to the hospital. they then very kindly break your waters for you. And then you arrived later that day, which was the Friday, to not screw up the weekend for anybody's weekend plans. Other than
It's
the
a
nanny we had hired, who had come for the few weeks before to get to know your elder sister and be ready and available when I was having you. And, well, we blew it, didn't we? You blew it, because she thought, no, she's not going to work for this family who screwed up her weekend plans, because she...
And I've suffered ever since, haven't I? 'Cause
So,
no one's
well,
ever
no,
around on the bank holiday
definitely
weekend.
suffered. So
Maybe that's why I hate my birthdays.
No, because I took you to my parents, and we were in the middle of moving house, because one's always moving house or having builders when you're having babies. It sort of goes hand in hand. So I went and stayed with Granny and Grandpa. That was terrifying. Your father was with a moving truck somewhere the other side of London, and my parents came to pick me up with your eldest sister, and my father was not a great driver. And I remember having you sort of, and again, in the car seat, and him lurching around in the car. The whole thing was a nightmare. And then getting home, and my poor dear mother actually trying her hardest. She would produce sort of a tray of toast and jam or something in bed. You know, she was an era of when one went into confinement, and it was all sort of very nice and bedridden all the time. And she'd arrive with this tray, and it would literally probably be just seconds after I'd managed to get you and me to sleep, you know. So it was like, oh, take this effing tray away. But she was trying. She was trying.
What would your advice be to someone, because this is another big one, is, and I think it's confusing on Instagram, is baby weight. Because some people drop it very quickly, some people don't.
Oh, this?
Some people have PTs. Mum, you do this every fucking day. My mother thinks she needs to lose weight. It's ridiculous. I mean, you honestly, having had 5 children, you look phenomenal.
Well, that was another pain in the ass thing, because they say that if you breastfeed, weight comes off without even having to think about it. Well, failed on the breastfeeding side of it, so shifting the weight was the other thing I then had to obviously try and do by myself, which I have an appetite of a horse. I blame my mother for that. So, in all honesty, I think I probably took a year
after the first one.
And your dad's advice was make sure you lose your baby weight before the second child. And I think that is probably key.
Really?
Because I did get my figure, back.
Well, between me and Cordelia, you probably just didn't look basically pregnant for 2 years.
And I, I put it on. I eat for 2, forget that. I was eating for 3 or 4. I just,
Not that you say this. From photos, I don't think you were.
Oh, but I'd love to eat. And I mean, I look at your I was going to say sister, but your cousin, sort of sister, special sister. She's a yoga teacher, and among other things, and her body is, within seconds of having a baby, she is just extraordinary. And I was not like that.
But it's but it's hard, because obviously now with Instagram, I think there's a lot of pressure. Not pressure, but it's weird actually. I had Emily Blackwell on here recently, and her baby was very premature, and so when she was putting up photographs, she I don't think she even got to the point that she never looked heavily pregnant, because the baby, I think she was she 3 months premature, and she was saying she was getting flack from people that when she was posting looking good on her Instagram, because she had lost obviously the baby weight, which I don't think was a huge amount, and people then having a go at her saying things. But it's like, this is what people actually go through now having kids. It's constant like mum shaming, like you're damned if you're doing, damned if you don't kind of thing.
I think it is terribly hard, and certainly, I suppose I was lucky in our era. We weren't meant to all be immaculate the day after. I remember Princess Kate.
Yeah,
is that
Kate.
the right title? I remember, and very publicly, there she is coming straight out of hospital, and she had a miserable time with hers, and she looked like she'd got her body back pretty damn quickly, or wearing a belt, and I thought, God almighty, I mean, to this day, I don't wear a belt. So, no, I think it's very sad. The tragedy is it should be embraced. You should love, if you're lucky enough to have a good pregnancy, and I was 5 times over, embrace that. You should be able to embrace your baby without all the do this, do that, don't do the other. I mean, and that is difficult, everybody telling, and your gut is trying to tell you one thing. I mean, I was so useless, I fed all of you on sort of baby bottles, or, I wasn't very good at sort of whizzing stuff up and all of this, you know, I don't think any of you have suffered, I hope. Mentally, you probably have, but physically, I don't think you were deprived.
No, I think we all have had everything. I talk to some people because I think even Bella, and I think she'd admit this, well, a friend of mine, she is not in a position where she has a PT who can help her work out every single day. But there are some people who are. So it's such a it's so hard now because of what's out there for you to determine what is actually real and what's actually not real. You get some people who embrace it, then you get the other people who sort of try and get themselves back to normal quickly. But was body shaming wasn't a thing when you were younger, was it?
No,
obviously not the way it is now because it's so.
No, now
out
it's
there.
dreadful, and I'm very glad I'm not young today for all of that, because I think it's mean, and I think it's the distortion is just dreadful. Or you know, people who want to have cesareans because you know too posh to push, or don't want the damage going on down below, or whatever it is. I mean, our last child was a cesarean, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone if they didn't have to go that route.
Really?
You know? Yeah.
Because actually that is a big thing.
I did not want medical intervention with any of them. This isn't a myth, this is truth. Didn't want a medical intervention with any of them. Your father was very much in need of the epidurals, so we let me have them for him. And
Wait, he was present at all of them, wasn't he?
yes,
And
even the last.
You had painkillers for all of us?
Not for the fourth one. They tried giving me gas and air, and that was revolting stuff. So I didn't do that. I just carried on. But yes. And then, well, yeah.
What?
No, I just was thinking of having Eddie. And at what point does this become too much information?
No, it's private parts for a reason, Mama.
For a reason. Anyway, so it wasn't an elective cesarean, but I had to have it because I was 42 and Eddie wasn't engaging. He's very engaging now, but he wasn't engaging then. Anyway, so I was talking to the doctor, and I'd got my time slot later that afternoon, and came out, and my mother-in-law was waiting, and she was not very impressed with me, I don't think, on many levels. Anyway, she said, she just looked at her watch as we came out, you know, and she said, you know, why were you in there so long? This was just for the consultation. And to which Kev sort of quickly said, oh, it's easy, Mum. We were just, you know, discussing getting Katie sterilised while they've got her open on the slab. So nothing private, of course, nothing private, not even on private parts. Anyway, and my mother-in-law sort of looked down her nose at me, and she was very short, actually. So and she said, oh, for God's sake, I can't think why you didn't have her done after the last child. So she was.
We shouldn't laugh at that. It's fucking shocking.
So she was my naming and shaming. Yes.
Oh yeah, God, I also because I always forget that's.
So that was.
I mean, it's awful. That is, you couldn't say that now. Can you imagine? That is shocking. It's so awful. Men are actually not. That's actually, she's a woman saying
but
that.
But actually, let's put it out there. Who's going to hold up their hand to wanting a vasectomy?
Well,
we live in an equal world.
Yeah, it's interesting. But guys, yeah.
It's not like taking a driving test. You don't fail. You just deliver what you hope is going to be the healthiest baby. And if the doctors say you need a cesarean or whatever, the mission is to have a healthy baby. It's not for you to score 10 out of 10 on the pain threshold or anything like that. And I think, you know, as much as I've just said, you know, people are too posh to push, I personally wish I had not had to have a cesarean. I don't like the little line that's there.
Well, no, because now a lot of people, and I think it's a pure vanity thing, and I think also it's, you know, loose whatever it is down there, people do opt for the cesarean. But when you're pushing out, you can have a thing done, can't you? They can, what's that, you know, tighten one up down there is an option.
Oh,
isn't it?
It's called no, I haven't had one of them.
Well, no, but what's it called? Because that's everyone's biggest worry is having to put it this way,
a slack vagina.
Yeah.
I don't know what the terminology would be. Haven't had one. I don't know. I'm yes, old school.
We'll move on to the myths then. Okay. Every woman is naturally maternal and has a maternal instinct.
No. The one good thing I learned in my antenatal class was that they said, do not expect to love your baby on sight. How long did it take you to fall in love with your partner? And I thought that was quite good. So it's not, again, those of you out there had love at first sight, good on you. If it built up to getting your love to where is or was or should be, then don't expect to just look at this thing and think, you know.
Yeah, because I think you see that a lot in like films and stuff, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's amazing."
No, so for me, and I'm sorry for my own children listening to this, it's not an instant bond. You know, they say, "Oh, you've nurtured it and carried it for 9 months," and it's a fantastic feeling. I loved all of that.
Did you get postnatal? Is it postnatal postpartum?
Didn't have the time. I'm sorry.
You
I was
were busy
very
being pregnant again.
I've been very lucky. There are people out there, and I'm not shaming anybody. I think it must be horrific.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. I didn't get it, that I'm aware of. Probably,
No.
if you ask your father,
He
I
went
must
through
have
it,
had all
obviously.
sorts
I
of
think
things.
he definitely had it. Having a baby will strengthen you both as a couple and erase any issues you have.
Crap.
Well,
I
no,
tell you
because
what-
they say this a lot about, a lot of people have babies to think it will
The
babies
glue
to fix
in a
things.
relationship. And again, all of this is personal, so it's my stuff, not anybody else's out there. People who think having that baby, that first baby, is the glue. Yes, it's glue in some respects, but it doesn't. The first months, years of that first baby or any subsequent babies, it's very grueling. You know, it's not just the glorious, you know, honey bunny pictures of everybody cuddling together. There's a lot of sleep deprivation. There's a lot of anxiety. Is it sleeping? Is it breathing? Is it eating? Is it pooing? Is it, you know, and is it your fault? Is it my fault? It's you.
Oh, wait,
you
and
know.
also actually with the different parenting styles, did that cause conflict ever between you and Kev about what you thought one should do and what he thought what you should do? Or were you
Luckily,
both
he
on the
didn't.
same
Oh,
page?
it depends what age you're talking about. I think, and again, I say it on Instagram, you know, when you're going to a relationship, make sure you have all these conversations. How many children? Your parenting styles. You're this, you're that, you're the other. We didn't really have those conversations, which is probably something we should have touched on. But you're right. You're bringing your stuff to the table of how you were brought up, and either what you want to not do or to do. I know one thing that Kevin and I have talked about it a fair bit is I always wanted to instill and still do instill confidence in my children, our children. And he very much says, oh no, but confidence comes from within. Well, I grew up in an environment where I didn't have any confidence, and I crave it, and today still need reassurance, and to know that I'm doing the right thing. And I think parenting is really rough on that, because you don't know. You know, you can give it your best shot, and by God, everybody does give it their best shot, but you don't know what's going to happen along the way, and what's going to influence your child later on. you know.
Yeah. When do you think, timing wise, when was your relationship the most testing with Kev? At what age were with us? Or what period?
Daily.
Currently. Perfect. And enter daddy. No, joking. I've got to stop calling him daddy as well. I fucking hate it. It's so crazy. Girls are a lot easier than boys to raise.
Can I phone a friend? In my experience to date,
I actually would say Eddie, even though I didn't raise anyone, but I think he seems easier than I would say we did.
I remember we had a nanny once, and she had been looking after you girls, and then she went off to work for a friend locally and leaving us, and she went to work for a friend who had 3 boys. Well, of course, I remember talking to the mother of these 3 boys afterwards, and there was no acronymity about her going to this other family. But this dear nanny was trying to make these 3 boys sit down and colour with crayons, you know. And it was like, Lucy said, like, on no way were these boys going to sit still. So girls at least sort of sit still, and they play with dolls, or they do whatever they do. So I'd say at a young age, they're easier. As they grow older, I think there's my advice to any people who want to be parents: go and do a psychology degree, and then you'll be able to tell me where I went wrong. Because I think we are complicated. We really are. And I think, again, you bring in all the different factors. Are you the eldest child, the middle child, the baby child, the youngest of 5, the middle of 2, or the youngest of 2? I think everybody has different stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so it's their place in the family. where you're at. You know, you may be struggling financially in the beginning when you have kids. You may be more affluent later. And so you can, you know, you're just victims of circumstance. But everybody gets out of bed in the morning, how knackered they are, to try and do the best for that baby. There's nobody out there, I hope not, who actually thinks, let's sabotage your life today. You know, and yet if you talk to my children, that's probably exactly what they think.
No, we don't. You need to stop having this
there are one or
self-doubt.
two. Right, you can. No,
I think you're amazing.
But you do. I mean, parenthood is self-doubt. I don't think you can.
Honestly, it would be fucking hard.
But it's like any job. You don't, you know, there's nobody out there saying, wow, 10 out of 10, she gets, you know, or you don't get a raise every now and again for performance.
But I will put you in the most phenomenal nursing home.
I'm
Thanks
looking
for the paycheck from Private Parts, Katie. And on that
looking forward to it, darling.
happy note, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Very interesting. Do I want children? Possibly not.
No.
I'll just be that pissed aunt, I think I've decided.
So go for it. Go for it.
Thank you, Mama.
Thank you.